I wish I had never met Joaquim. Maybe then my daughter would still be alive.
A 19-year-old young woman, a protective stepfather, an innocent outing to take photos at a tourist hill. Sounds like the beginning of a peaceful family afternoon, doesn't it? But what happened on that day, December 17th, 2013, in Pirenópolis, Goiás, shocked all of Brazil and revealed something so disturbing that to this day, it raises questions about trust, obsession, and the dangers that can be hidden inside our own homes. Imagine trusting someone as if they were your father, someone you've known since you were 9 years old, who protects you, who worries about you, who constantly calls to check if you're okay. Now imagine discovering that this very person was your greatest predator. The case of Loanne Rodrigues isn't just about a brutal crime. It's about how obsession can disguise itself as care, how jealousy can hide behind the mask of protection. Is there anything more terrifying than discovering that the monster wasn't hiding in the shadows, but sitting at the dinner table with you every day? This is the case of Loanne Rodrigues, and the story that revealed what was really hiding behind a false gesture of protection. A true story, disturbing, and one that serves as a warning to all of us. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This way, you help us continue bringing more true stories that deserve to be known and remembered. Now, let's get to the case. Pirenópolis is a small historic town in the heart of Goiás, about 128 kilometers from Goiânia, one of those places that seem frozen in time, with its cobblestone streets, colonial mansions, and the distant sound of traditional festivals echoing through the hills. Known for its waterfalls, hospitality, and the tranquility typical of the Brazilian countryside, in 2013 the town had just over 25,000 inhabitants, a charming tourist destination, until a brutal crime stained its calmness. It was there, in that setting of peace and simplicity, that Loanne Rodrigues da Silva Costa lived. Loanne was born on April 4, 1994, daughter of Sandra Rodrigues da Silva and Joely Aparecido da Costa. She grew up being described by everyone as a beautiful, cheerful, communicative, and extremely charismatic girl. Those who knew Loanne didn't forget her. She had that type of energy that lights up any environment. Loanne loved making new friends. She was vain, went to the gym, applied makeup carefully, and was always smiling. Her friends called her cowgirl because she loved the country style, always in boots, hat, and passionate about country music. She also loved horseback riding and taking care of animals, something common for someone who lived in the rural area like her. Besides being beautiful and charismatic, Loanne was intelligent and full of dreams. In 2012, she started studying nursing in Anápolis, about 60 kilometers from her home. During the week, she dedicated herself to her studies. On weekends, she worked as a children's monitor at a local inn to help with expenses. And she had a big dream, to become a firefighter. She said she wanted to save lives. Like most young women her age, Loanne liked to go out, attend country music parties in the region, and hang out with friends. She had dated twice, and even after the breakups, she managed to maintain a good friendship with her ex-boyfriends. She was the kind of person loved by everyone. But to understand what happened to Loanne, we need to go back in time a bit and get to know her family. When Loanne was only 7 years old, her biological parents, Sandra and Joely, decided to separate. It's a difficult situation for any child, but Loanne and her brother Luan, who was 2 years younger, had the support of both parents. Joely never stopped being present in his children's lives, even after the separation. 2 years after the separation, when Loanne was 9 years old, Sandra met a man named Joaquim Lourenço da Luz. He was a minor, 47 years old at the time of the crime, and already had 2 children from another relationship. Sandra and Joaquim started dating, and after some time, decided to move in together. And here's an important detail. From the beginning, Joaquim got along very well with Sandra's children. He began treating Loanne and Luan as if they were his own children. Joaquim took on the stepfather role, took care of them, educated them, and apparently everyone got along very well. To Loanne, Joaquim was a father figure. She respected him, obeyed him, and trusted him. After all, he had been there since she was 9 years old. He was almost like a father to her. Joely, Loanne's biological father, also kept in touch with Joaquim. They talked about raising the children, and Jolie would sometimes ask his children if Joaquim treated them well. The answer was always positive. No one, absolutely no one, suspected anything wrong. But as Loanne grew up and became a young woman, something began to change. Loanne had always been very beautiful, and as she grew older, became more independent. She started attracting attention. Many boys were interested in her. She went out to parties, came home late, as any 19-year-old does. And that's when Joaquim began showing excessive concern. At first, it seemed like just fatherly care. He worried about Loanne coming home late. He constantly called to know where she was, who she was with, what time she would return. Sandra, Loanne's mother, was sometimes bothered by this behavior, but thought it was just paternal care. Joaquim would wait up for Loanne to come home from parties, and when she took too long, he would even go to the parties to pick her up, saying he was afraid something might happen to her on the way home. During the calls, he was often rude, especially when he found out that Loanne was talking to other men. But most disturbing, Joaquim interfered with Loanne's relationships. She had 2 boyfriends, and in one of these relationships, the young man decided to break up suddenly, without giving many details. Loanne was very sad and asked her mother to call the young man and ask why. His response was direct. It's because of the stepfather, but he didn't want to give more details. Sandra ignored it. She thought it was just excessive protection. The biological father, Joaquim, also noticed that Joaquim had an almost obsessive concern about Loanne. He even commented on it, but since the children always said everything was fine, he assumed it was just a father's care for his daughter. After all, that's what Joaquim said, that Loanne was like a daughter to him, that he just wanted to protect her. But the truth was much, much darker, and the first signs that something was profoundly wrong began to appear in May 2012. It was a night in May 2012. Loanne was returning from a regional town festival, the traditional Festa do Divino. She arrived home alone, around midnight. She was opening the gate when, suddenly, someone appeared behind her and struck a violent blow to her head. It was a club strike. Strong, brutal. Loanne fell to the ground, dazed, and when she tried to defend herself from a second blow, she had 2 fingers broken. The front of the house was poorly lit. Everything was dark. She couldn't see who did it. Desperate, Loanne started screaming for help. Sandra, her mother, was sleeping on the couch, but the first to hear the cry for help was Joaquim. He woke up his wife and told her to call the police, while he ran out to help Loanne. The young woman was rushed to the hospital. The head wound was serious. She needed more than 30 stitches. The doctor said she was lucky not to have been hit with more force, or the consequences could have been much worse. A police report was filed. The police investigated. They asked if Loanne could remember anything, if she had enemies, if anyone had threatened her. She said no. She had never had problems with anyone, but she remembered a very interesting detail. A detail that, at the time, no one paid much attention to, but that later would make complete sense. Loanne said that night, the house dogs didn't bark, and that was extremely strange. The family dogs barked at everything. Any stranger who passed near the house, they would bark. But that night, when Loanne was attacked, they remained silent. What did this mean? It meant that the person who attacked Loanne was known to the dogs. It was someone from the family, or very close to it. The police noted this information, but without concrete suspects, the case ended up being filed. The family was scared, but over time, they tried to move on. Loanne recovered. She returned to her normal routine. But the shadow of that attack never completely disappeared, and the worst was still to come. About a year after the attack, in late 2013, strange things started happening again. Loanne began receiving letters, anonymous notes, and the content of these messages was terrifying. One of these letters said the following: "I'm coming to Pirenópolis. This time it's to stay. How lucky you were not to die this time. Your damned stepfather won't be around to protect you. Hell awaits you. Your day will come." Imagine the terror, the anguish, the fear that Loanne and her family must have felt reading that. It was clear. Someone was stalking Loanne. Someone who had already attacked her before. and who was now threatening to do something worse. The family was completely desperate. They filed another police report. The police were called again, but just like the first time, there were no suspects, no concrete leads. Who could hate Loanne so much as to stalk her, threaten her, want to kill her? She was a girl loved by everyone. She had no enemies. She never got into trouble. Why would anyone do this to her? From that moment on, Loanne's life changed completely. She became afraid to go out alone. She was always accompanied by her mother, her brother, friends, or Joaquim. Joaquim, in fact, intensified his protection of Loanne even more. He wouldn't let her go out alone at all. He was always nearby, always watching, always controlling. To the family, this seemed to be just a concerned stepfather, trying to protect his stepdaughter from an unknown stalker. But the reality was very different. In an attempt to ease the tension and distract Loanne a bit, Joaquim had an idea. He suggested that the three of them, he, Sandra, and Loanne, go for an outing to Morro do Frota, a tourist spot in Pirenópolis. Morro do Frota is a beautiful place, with trails and an incredible panoramic view of the city. People go there to hike, camp, take photos. It's a peaceful place, popular among tourists. Joaquim said he wanted to take some photos to post on social media. It would be a quick outing, a pleasant family afternoon. Loanne initially wasn't very excited, but after a few days, she agreed. And it was set, December 17th, 2013, a Tuesday. No one imagined that would be the last day of Loanne Rodrigues' life. On the afternoon of December 17th, 2013, around 3 p.m., Sandra drove to Morro do Frota, taking Joaquim and Loanne. The plan was simple. They would hike to the top of the hill, which was about 10 kilometers from the city center, take some photos, and return before nightfall. Loanne took a shower, put on a pink blouse, applied makeup. She looked beautiful, as always. During the car ride, they even talked about going Christmas shopping in Annapolis in the coming days. When they arrived at the location, Sandra started climbing with them, but halfway through she got tired and decided to go back. She said she was going home and would return to pick them both up in about an hour, but she asked them to call if they finished earlier. Sandra went home and waited. About 50 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Loanne. She said they had already reached the top of the hill, that they had already taken the photos, about 20 photos, all of Joaquim, and that they were fine. She mentioned they were thirsty, but that Joaquim had brought water. She said they would come down soon and call again for Sandra to pick them up. That was the last time Sandra heard her daughter's voice. 45 minutes passed. An hour, and neither Loanne nor Joaquim called. Sandra started to worry. She called her daughter's cell phone, but couldn't make contact. The phone only went to voicemail, or the call wouldn't go through. Worried, Sandra decided to go to the agreed meeting point. She arrived there, but there was no one. She waited, called for them, searched the surroundings. Nothing. The sun was setting, night was approaching, and neither Loanne nor Joaquim showed any signs of life. Sandra called the police and firefighters. The search began immediately. About 18 military personnel entered the hill and searched until after midnight, but the darkness and the rain that began to fall made visibility very difficult. They decided to pause the search and resume the next day at dawn. The family spent the night awake, anguished, not knowing what could have happened, hoping it was just a case of people lost on the trail. The next morning, December 18th, the search resumed. This time, in addition to firefighters and police, many townspeople joined to help. People who knew the hill well, the trails, the paths. And it was around 1 p.m. that a resident made a discovery that would shock everyone. In an area of dense forest, difficult to access, about 300 meters below the top of the hill, far from the main trails, the resident found something he would never forget. 2 bodies, one male and one female, in an absolute scene of horror. Loanne was lying on the ground, under leaves and dirt. Her hands and feet were tied with ropes to a tree trunk. Joaquim was lying on top of her, also tied, with a chain on his feet connecting the two. Both had their abdominal region completely open. Organs were exposed. There were burns on their arms and faces. Joaquim's face was partially destroyed. He had a gag in his mouth. The scene was devastating. And it became clear to the forensic experts this had not been caused by knife stabs or another type of common bladed weapon. It was an explosion. The two were killed by a dynamite explosion. At the scene, several objects were found. A red lighter, dynamite remnants, a knife with no blood traces, Loanne's cell phone and purse, ropes, chains. About 100 meters from the bodies, there was a completely burned camping tent. Later examinations revealed even more disturbing details. There were no signs of sexual abuse. There were no signs of struggle or that the bodies had been dragged to that location. In other words, everything happened right there, and Loanne had no chance to defend herself. Toxicological exams showed there was ethanol in Loanne's blood, and in a 500 ml bottle found at the scene, there was clonazepam, a sedative medication, diluted in water. The investigators' hypothesis: Joaquim drugged Loanne. She drank the water with the sedative, became incapacitated, and then he tied her up. But here comes the question everyone was asking. If Joaquim also died, who committed the crime? Initially, the police believed it was a case of revenge, a double homicide committed by a third person, possibly the same stalker who had attacked Loanne before and sent the threatening letters. But as the investigation progressed, the evidence began pointing in a completely unexpected direction. The perpetrator of all this was Joaquim himself. The family didn't want to believe it. Sandra, Loanne's mother, was in shock. How could the man she had been married to for 7 years, the man who treated her daughter as if she were his own, be responsible? But the evidence was irrefutable. First, the forensics of the objects. All items found at the crime scene belonged to Joaquim. The burned tent was his. The ropes and chains came from his own house. They had been taken at least 1 day before the crime. The dynamite was from the company where he worked as a miner. Second, the threatening letters. A handwriting specialist analyzed the handwriting of the threatening notes received by Loanne and compared it with Joaquim's handwriting. Conclusion: they were from the same person. Joaquim had written those letters, trying to disguise his own handwriting. Third, the 2012 attack. Remember the dogs didn't bark? Because the attacker was someone they knew very well. It was Joaquim. Fourth, the planning. The investigation revealed that Joaquim had planned everything at least 2 months in advance. 1 month before the crime, he took out a life insurance policy worth 30,000 reais, naming his wife and biological children as beneficiaries. He even asked the bank manager if the insurance covered suicide cases. Weeks before, he sold the exploitation rights to a quarry to a colleague, asking for secrecy about the negotiation. 1 week before the crime, he quit his job. He was preparing, organizing everything. Fifth, the testimonies. Joaquim's biological children were interviewed by the police, and the revelations were shocking. The son, 24 years old, said he noticed something malicious in the relationship between his father and Loanne, that the love Joaquim felt for her wasn't that of a father for a daughter. Loanne's friends reported that Joaquim was extremely jealous, that he constantly called her, to the point of being annoying, and that this obsessive jealousy was the real reason Loanne's relationships ended. Family members remembered small details that, at the time, didn't seem important. Joaquim gave Loanne foot massages. The two would lie together watching TV, things that could be seen as normal between father and daughter, but that, after the crime, took on a much more sinister meaning. The police conclusion was clear. Joaquim harbored a sick obsession, a disturbing platonic love for Loanne, a feeling she never reciprocated because, to her, he was just a stepfather, a father figure. And that's exactly what led Joaquim to plan that horrible crime. The police were able to reconstruct, based on evidence, how everything happened. Joaquim planned the crime for months. He had already taken the tent, ropes, chains, and dynamite to Morro do Frota before the day of the outing. He left everything prepared in a hidden location, away from the main trails. On December 17th, he invited Loanne for that outing, using the excuse of taking photos. Sandra started climbing with them, but Joaquim probably knew she would get tired and give up halfway, or perhaps he encouraged her to go back. When Loanne and Joaquim reached the top and took the photos, he offered her water that was mixed with clonazepam, a strong sedative. Loanne drank it, trusting him, After all, he was her stepfather. Why would she suspect? The sedative began to take effect. Loanne became drowsy, incapacitated. That's when Joaquim took her to the location he had prepared beforehand. He tied her up, ropes on her hands and feet, tied to a tree. She had no way to defend herself, no way to escape. Then, Joaquim tied himself up too. He put a chain on his own feet, connected to Loanne's feet. He positioned the dynamite between the two. He put a gag in his own mouth and lit the fuse. The explosion killed them both instantly. Why did he do all this? Why did he kill himself too? The answer lies in the life insurance. Joaquim wanted it to look like a double homicide committed by a third party. That way, his family would receive the insurance money. He tried to stage an attack by a stalker, the same mysterious enemy who had attacked Loanne before and sent the letters. But he made a fatal mistake. He left too much evidence. All the objects were his. The handwriting on the letters was his. Witnesses saw him on the hill hours before. Forensics uncovered everything. The motive for the crime, obsession, jealousy, possessiveness. Joaquim loved Loanne in a sick, distorted way. And when he realized she would never reciprocate that feeling, that she would never see him as anything more than a stepfather, that she would continue going out, dating, living her life, he decided that if she couldn't be his, she wouldn't be anyone's. So he killed her, and killed himself along with her. The investigation was concluded about a year later, in 2014. The case was officially closed and filed as a crime of passion followed by suicide. There was no evidence of third-party participation. The bodies of Loanne and Joaquim were buried on December 18, 2013, in the Pirenópolis cemetery. Sandra insisted that her daughter be buried with her favorite white hat, the cowgirl hat she loved to wear. The impact of this crime was devastating. For the family, for friends, for the entire city. Sandra, Loanne's mother, was devastated. She said she felt guilty for not having noticed the signs, guilty for having trusted Joaquim, guilty for having shown him where the dynamite was when he asked days before the crime. She didn't imagine. How could she imagine? 4 years after the crime, Sandra moved from the house where she lived with her family. She couldn't bear to stay there anymore. Every corner brought memories of Loanne, of her daughter's room, her dreams, the life that was brutally interrupted. Sandra confided, "I wish I had never met Joaquim. Maybe then my daughter would still be alive." Joaquim's mother, who was 81 years old at the time of the crime, became ill shortly after discovering what her son had done. 4 months later, she passed away. Loanne's friends gathered in vigils, brought flowers and letters to the nursing school where she studied. Everyone said the same thing. She had a special glow. She was a person who lit up any environment. A young woman full of dreams, life, and future ahead of her. And all of this was taken from her. By someone she trusted. Someone who should have protected her. This case raises profound and disturbing questions. How can obsession disguise itself as care? How can jealousy hide behind the mask of paternal protection? How many signs do we ignore because we want to believe that the people around us are good? Joaquim managed to deceive everyone for years. Loanne's mother, her biological father, friends, Loanne herself. Everyone believed he was just a protective stepfather, perhaps excessively zealous, but well-intentioned. No one imagined that behind that protection, there was a sick obsession, a distorted love, a desire for absolute control. And the most terrifying part, it was Joaquim who attacked Loanne in 2012. It was he who wrote the threatening letters. It was he who created the climate of fear, making Loanne believe there was an unknown stalker lurking, all to keep her under control, all to have her always nearby, always dependent on him for protection. It's manipulation on a frightening level. More than a decade has passed since that terrible day in December 2013. Pirenópolis continued being a tourist town, charming, welcoming. But for those who lived through this tragedy, the town was never the same. Morro do Frota still receives visitors. People still hike, take photos, camp. Most don't even know about the story that happened there. And perhaps that's better. But the name of Loanne Rodrigues must not be forgotten. Not as a statistic, not as another case of violence, but as a reminder. A reminder that danger doesn't always come from where we expect, that trust can be manipulated, that obsession can disguise itself as love for years, decades, until it's too late. Loanne was 19 years old. She was studying nursing. She dreamed of being a firefighter. She wanted to save lives. She should be here today, at 30 years old. Graduated, working, saving the lives she dreamed of saving, perhaps with her own family, perhaps still wearing her cowgirl hats, going to country music parties, smiling that smile everyone remembers. But she's not, because someone decided that if he couldn't have her, no one could. And that is one of the cruelest forms of violence that exists. I hope this story has touched you in some way, that it made you reflect, that perhaps it alerted you to something you didn't notice before. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please leave your like, subscribe to the channel, share this video. Stories like Loanne's need to be told, not to shock, but to educate, to warn, to perhaps save a life. Leave in the comments what you thought of this case. But please, always with respect for the memory of Loanne and her family. Until the next video, and take care.